the original work of Su Qing's autobiographical novel 10 Years of Marriage Chapter 4, Hunger for Love. When I returned to school, it was already late autumn, but I was pregnant with spring. My fantasy of spring was very vague at first. I only remember that in the spring when I was 15 years old, a bodhisattva consecrated the temple. I followed Aunt Yun to watch the consecration show. The performance on the stage happened to be Dragon and Phoenix, the story of Liu Bei's marriage to Mrs. Sun. Somehow, I didn't pay any attention to Liu Bei at that time. What I paid attention to was Zhao Yun, who had pink face and red lips, white satin armor, and many embroidered pennants on his back. His eyebrows were thick and black, hanging diagonally on his forehead, like two black gold swords. This is really heroic, I think. With him escorting Mrs. Sun's car, Liu Bei seems to be a completely useless pestle. At that time, I wished that I was Mrs. Sun, and Liu Bei had better be captured and killed by Su Zhou's pursuers, so that Zhao Yun could protect me and escape. From then on, I fell in love with Zhao Yun and dreamed about it day and night. When I had free time, I only read the romance of the Three Kingdoms over and over again. From the appearance of Zhao Yun to the end of his general's death, I read it carefully word by word, sentence by sentence, chapter by chapter, for fear that he would be forgotten. There are some slight omissions in his life. Later, after reading it more times, I realized that certain pages had his name, while certain pages did not. Of course, the former was more worthy of reading again and again. Moreover, I don't agree with others in my reading sense. When people read about Zhao Yun's teachings, they always pay attention to his rescue of Adu by Chang Banbo. But I pay attention to the fact that he later divided 4 counties with Huang Zhang, almost lost his son to Zhao. Ban was forced to go to jail to recruit a bride. He didn't love Zhao Fan's widowed sister-in-law, which really made me secretly happy. However, he finally got married. Otherwise, where would his son come from? Who his wife is not mentioned in the novel, so we can tell that her beauty is not as good as Erqiao Diachen, and her talent is not as good as Huang Chengyin's daughter. This makes me feel a little relieved even though I am so happy. So I have reached a period of reflection. My ideal hero is one with pink face and red lips, white satin armor, and many embroidered flags on his back. But is there such a person in front of us? Of course not. Therefore, I had no choice but to do the next best thing, and thought to myself, cousins cannot be said to do such things. Although there are many cousins, because we are familiar with each other, we cannot see their greatness. As for the rest, I went to a girls' middle school and had no chance to interact with men at all. Even the few male teachers are old, ugly, and because they are so old, the principal is not worried and wants to put up a wooden sign saying students stop 3 to 5 cents away from the teacher's dormitory. I didn't have the chance to find a hero, so my mother had no choice but to find one for me, and that was Changshan. In the spring when I was 16, we got engaged. After the engagement, we were introduced and corresponded, but we never met. It feels really sweet to communicate with a boy I don't know. At first he called me Ms. WC. Then he called me Huiking. Then King, Ching Mai, my Kinger. As for me, I treated him with courtesy, from Mr. C. Y to Changshan, Xian, Zhanj. The only thing I didn't include was my title, because my heart was really beating so hard that I no longer had the courage to write it, let alone the courage to send it to him after I finished it. Some people may wonder why I am so enamored with a fiancé I don't know and why I am so excited to meet him in person. But I am not surprised by this, because every time I write to him, a man with pink face and red lips, white armor, and many embroidered pennants on his back appears in front of me. Go! My heart was shaken so much by him that I wanted to vomit out some words to feel a little relieved. Originally, I planned to write a reply only the 3rd time after I received a letter from him, because it was more reserved this way. If I replied too early, I was afraid that he would laugh at my impatience and look down on me. But in fact, as soon as I received the letter, I felt the shadow of the hero in armor moving around. I felt upset and uncomfortable, and I just wanted to vomit. I would feel better after vomiting 3 or 4 words on the letter paper. If I were to vomit violently, I might not be able to finish writing on 7 or 8 pieces of paper, but I didn't dare to write more, which was also reserved. After I finished writing, I didn't dare to send it immediately, so I stuffed it in a pillowcase, secretly took it out and read it when no one saw it, and wished I could send it immediately. By the evening of the next day, I finally couldn't help it anymore and secretly put it in the post office box. In my heart, I just hoped that the police would pick it up sooner and help me to complete this difficult task for me. Work. By the time he called me dear young sister in the letter, it was already summer vacation and I had graduated from junior high school at S Girls High School. Because of his suggestion, and with my mother's consent, I transferred to the high school section of F Middle School. F Middle School is a co-educational school. He studied here in junior high school, and now he and I are in high school together, but he is in Group A, and I am in Group B. Word spread so fast in the school, and before my name was revealed on the freshman admission list, everyone already knew about our relationship. From now on, whenever we meet in the corridor or on the playground, everyone will clap and burst into laughter. I still didn't recognize him at that time, but I was observing his words, and whenever everyone smiled, I saw a tall shadow running away in the distance. I knew it was him, so of course I didn't dare to take a closer look. Thinking about it afterwards, I seemed to remember some vague impressions from a glance. He was wearing a white shirt and white suit and trousers, but his face could not be seen clearly. Although we were in the same school, we still didn't have the opportunity to meet and talk. We still exchanged letters. I dropped the written letter in the post office box at the school gate. The postman took it to the post office to have it stamped, and then sent it back to the school. He went to the concierge and took it out. This correspondence continued for another year until he graduated and left school. It's just that when I wrote the letter, I no longer saw the shadow of the hero in white armor and pennant. Instead, he was replaced by his tall body wearing a white shirt and white suit and trousers. He is my hero, I thought to myself, feeling happy in my heart. Originally, in a school with male and female classmates, there were many young men and monks, and girls always had many opportunities to be pursued, so I refused all non-heroic pursuits for him. The beauty of the courtyard now has a master. Luoyang will not leave any poems from now on. This is a good line in the peach blossom poem I wrote. I was closely circled by the Chinese teacher, and I also remembered it firmly in my heart. He is my hero. Mine. But what about Ruixian? The young woman in silver clothes. Yu Yuan Fang Fei, I couldn't read it anymore. I just felt sad. Isn't my destiny just like the petals of a peach blossom? Each piece has been destroyed and scattered on the ground, but there is still no master to pick it up. All illusions are gone. The hero in white armor with an embroidered pennant on his back is no longer interested in me. As for the man in a white shirt, white suit and pants, he is also someone else's. I feel so empty in my heart that I just want to grab something right away, tear it into pieces and bite it as hard as I can. There are 4 buildings in the female dormitory of University C, named after Southeast and Northwest. I live in the South building, and the window is facing the door. Entering through the main door is the reception room. Every time after dinner, I looked out the window and saw handsome young men in suits and leather shoes coming in from the dormitory door and walking into the reception room. After a while, the concierge came in and shouted, "Miss XX, we have a guest." Then the lady named XX responded, quickly put on powder, changed clothes, and after a long time, she passed by my window and walked gracefully into the reception room. There were 5 girls in our room, including me, and the 4 of them had gone to have dinner with guests. After 9 o'clock, I was the only one left, sleeping on my bed. I saw the electric light shining brightly, illuminating the rest of the room. For empty beds, how sad I feel. So I am pregnant with spring. No matter how the fallen leaves outside the window fall, my heart will only float upward to the soft peach-colored sky. Moreover, in the past, my concept of love was still vague. I didn't know how to love and what would happen if I loved it. But now I understand it all. I need a young, beautiful, passionate man who can cuddle up to me every night and sleep with my head on the bed. No need to talk too much. We can be in love with each other. Soul and soul, body and body, merge and embrace each other forever. But in fact, I was sleeping alone in a lonely dormitory. There were empty beds across from me, behind my feet, and beside my head. With great difficulty, when I fell asleep, a few bed bugs crawled out from the cracks in the bed, climbed onto the pillow, and secretly kissed my head, neck and ears. What about mine? So I secretly thought again, The boys in the law school are very well dressed, with neat suits and high-spirited looks, but I think they are a bit vulgar. What about the boys in the music department and art department? His hair is too long, his expression is too lazy, and his clothes are too strange and irregular, which is too eye-catching. The boys from the other education departments looked shabby. The boys from the Chinese literature department looked wintry, and the boys from the physical education department couldn't bear it. If appearance is anything to go by, I'd rather go to the same department as me. The male students from the Western literature department, their clothes are quite neat, but they are dressed quite naturally. Their attitude is smart, but not frivolous. They are polite and considerate, but not reluctant. They are strong, but not as rough as cattle. This is appropriate. Another thing that makes me most happy is that they are very respectful and polite to me. This may be a common lady first truth for them, but because I am hungry for love, I mistakenly think that they really have some respect for me. I am a person full of new theories, but my actions are always governed by old ideas. Let's take the concept of love as an example. When you think about it, you should be absolutely free, but when you do it, you always feel that there is something wrong. The thought of one woman and two husbands, like a ghost, always flashes through my mind. Although I am a non-ghost believer, the sight of a solitary lamp and green shadow will inevitably make my hair curl with fear no matter how I explain it. When I miss you, you came, but not what I really need. So I returned all the long letters in English and tore up French poems and the like. I always felt like a lonely light and green shadow in my heart. Moreover, I also have a strange temperament. That is, I like courting but don't like being asked for. Unfortunately, I'm a woman, and my habits have made me reserved. I dare not ask for help throughout my life. At the same time, I cannot absolutely avoid the trouble of being asked for. This is really it makes people feel bored and annoyed. The red leaves of Kixia Mountain flew all over the ground and finally became part of the soil's nutrients. The water in Huhu Lake was also frozen, and the broken stems of the lotus leaves were molded on the shore. There were no yachts carrying passionate people to pay their respects. My heart still lingered. The day was in Huaikun, but the weather was cold, and my body couldn't be soft and soft. I had no choice but to borrow the fire in the library to warm my stiff hands when I was writing and copying notes in preparation for the big exam. There were not many people in the library. Although the weather was cold, they might be able to go to the cinema or dance hall to keep warm. The person sitting opposite me is often this person, wearing black leather shoes, gray woolen robe, wearing a pair of white myopia glasses, and his attitude is kind but quite solemn. Later, when we met more often, everyone smiled half-heartedly instead of saying hello. What he was reading was a thick dress book with geometric paintings, which seemed to be about engineering. One time when I walked out of the library, he came out too. As usual, he smiled half-heartedly as a greeting, and suddenly asked, "Where are you going?" "In the dormitory," I replied quietly. "Which department are you from?" he asked again, with a very natural attitude. "Department of Western Literature," I said, but somehow I felt a little embarrassed. "What's your surname?" "Su." So they said goodbye with a smile, but not a smile, and everyone separated. Back in the dormitory, I forgot about the cold, opened the back window and stood facing the north, letting the north wind roar in my face. But I faced its attack without fear. When the attack was fierce, my eyes were already covered by the cold wind. The bullet hit, but it still refused to close the door, shining with joyful light. There is a brand new and tall bungalow to the north, and that is the engineering museum. Everyone had finished dinner, but I was still standing. At that time, if I was willing to close the back window, I would look back and see that the door of the dormitory was already busy. Young men wearing heavy winter coats and having their clues hidden in the fur collars of their coats rushed into the reception room. After a while, the porter also shrank his head, but without a coat, he couldn't shrink his head into the collar of the cotton robe. He had to hold it with both hands and shouted as he walked on the road, "Miss So-and-so, we have a guest." After shouting, he didn't care about so-and-so. The young lady didn't hear anything, so she held her face in her hands and turned away. She returned to the concierge, but was still sitting on her buttocks. But she had to be forced out with a sad face and called another young lady. I think it would be weird if a porter didn't get a bad cold in the winter. Before I could finish thinking, I heard a waiter downstairs shouting with a nasal voice, as if he was suffering from a severe cold. "Miss Su, we have a guest." He didn't even shout out halfway. Weird. What's even more strange is that after shouting, he came upstairs sneezing, holding a business card in his hand. As soon as I jumped in front of him, I grabbed the business card with my hands and took a look. 3 long imitation song font characters were clearly printed on the white and firm paper, Ying Chi-min. So I anxiously walked around the room. "Where are we going out? Why don't you go out? What about changing clothes? Or not?" The concierge was so weird that he didn't go back at this moment. He just held his face and looked at me with his dark eyes. I felt my face suddenly getting hot, and I quickly held my face with my hands, ran out of the bedroom as if escaping into the concierge, and then ran into the living room as if escaping from the cold. He, the one wearing black leather shoes, a gray woolen robe, and the man wearing platinum-rimmed myopia glasses stood up among the crowd and greeted me with a half-smile. "Miss Su, I don't dare. It's Mr. Ying." I spoke in a hurried voice, put my hands down, and the expression on my face was probably a smile but not a smile.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.